This is Optimal Living Daily, episode 420, 5 Things to Remember When Someone You Love Loses Someone They Love, Part 1, by Marc Chernoff of marcandangel.com, and I'm Justin Malik. Happy Friday and welcome back to Optimal Living Daily. The Optimal Living Daily network includes 4 podcasts for now, where we read to you from some of the best blogs we can find. And on this podcast, I cover personal development, minimalism, and anything I think can help you live a more meaningful life. And today's episode is the start of a 2-parter. The post is a little long, so I'll finish the rest in tomorrow's episode. So with that, let's get right to part 1 of the post and start optimizing your life. 5 Things to Remember When Someone You Love Loses Someone They Love, Part 1, by Marc Chernoff of marcandangel.com. Tears shed for another person are not a sign of weakness. They are a sign of a pure, loving heart. We all know deep down that life is short and that death will happen to all of us eventually, and yet we are infinitely shocked when it happens to someone we love. It's like walking up a flight of stairs with a distracted mind and misjudging the final step. You expected there to be one more stair than there is, and so you find yourself off balance for a moment before your mind shifts back to the present moment and how the world really is. Angel and I have dealt with the loss of siblings and best friends to illness, so we know from experience that when you lose someone that you can't imagine living without, your heart breaks wide open. And the bad news is you never completely get over the loss. You will never forget them. However, in a backwards way, this is also the good news. You see, death is an ending, which is a necessary part of living. And even though endings like these often seem ugly, they are necessary for beauty too. Otherwise, it's impossible to appreciate someone or something because they are unlimited. Limits illuminate beauty, and death is the definitive limit. A reminder that we need to be aware of this beautiful person and appreciate this beautiful thing called life. Death is also a beginning because while we have lost someone special, this ending, like the loss of any wonderful life situation, is a moment of reinvention. Although sad, their passing forces us to reinvent our lives, and in this reinvention is an opportunity to experience beauty in new, unseen ways and places. And finally, of course, death is an opportunity to celebrate a person's life and to be grateful for the beauty they showed us. That's just a small slice of what coping with loss has taught us, and I'm sure it has taught you some things as well. But as Angel and I have recently been reminded, there's a big difference between understanding how to personally cope with loss and understanding how to help someone else cope with it. When someone you love and respect is grieving the loss of a loved one, the right words and gestures rarely come easy. So the reminders you're about to hear are for Angel and me as we attempt to comfort a dear friend who is grieving. These aren't universal clarifications, but simple guidelines that give us a general starting point for helping our grief-stricken loved ones cope and heal gradually. Perhaps you will find value in them as well. Number 1, a person who's grieving already knows that time heals wounds, and they don't need to be reminded of it. When you're grieving, everyone wants to remind you that time will heal your pain, but no one can seem to tell you exactly what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to cope right now. And that's all you really want to know. Because it's right now that you can't sleep. It's right now that you can't eat. It's right now that you still hear his voice and smell his scent and sense his presence, even though you know he's not here anymore. It's right now that all you seem to be capable of is crying. So despite the fact that you intellectually know all about time's power to heal wounds, if you had all the time in the world right now, you still wouldn't know what to do with immediate intense pain you feel. Realize this and treat those who are grieving accordingly. Don't remind them that time heals. Instead, remind them that you're with them right now and that you'll be available tomorrow too. Remind them that you love them and that you're standing beside them through their grief. Remind them that they aren't going through this alone. Number 2, grief doesn't suddenly disappear, and some days are much better than others. When someone you love passes away or simply leaves and you're not expecting it, you don't lose them all at once. You lose them a little bit at a time over weeks, months, and years, the way snail mail gradually stops coming to an address and a person's scent slowly fades from the pillows and even from the clothes they used to wear. Everyone grieves in their own way. For some of us, it could take longer or shorter. One thing you can be certain of, however, is that grief never completely disappears. An ember still smolders inside our grieving hearts, even when we've moved forward with our lives. Most days we don't notice it, but out of the blue, it may flare to life. This reality is hard to deal with. We think we've accepted that they're gone, that we've grieved and it's over, and then boom, one little thing happens and we feel like we've lost that person all over again. This is exactly why caring for someone who's grieving requires incredible patience. Read Healing After Loss. Number 3, hear that in tomorrow's episode. You just listened to part 1 of the post titled 5 Things to Remember When Someone You Love Loses Someone They Love by Marc Chernoff of marcandangel.com. And I'm reading this a lot for myself. I didn't lose someone very recently and luckily don't have close friends who have either that I know of. But this past week was a really close one, so I thought this would be good to read for both you and me. And I haven't really been wanting to talk about it, but I think my brother is going to on today's episode of Optimal Health Daily. That's his podcast, so you're welcome to listen to that. And I hope you have a great Friday and start to your weekend, and I'll see you tomorrow where I'll wrap up this post and where your optimal life awaits.
Hey, this is Dan from the Optimal Finance Daily podcast, which is a lot like this show, except more focused on personal finance. Justin handpicks the best posts he can find from blogs and authors like Ramit Sethi, Mr. Money Mustache, and more, and I read them to you 5 days a week. So if you enjoy this podcast, come on over and subscribe to Optimal Finance Daily too. And together, we'll optimize your financial life.
You've been listening to Optimal Living Daily. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on each new episode and head to oldpodcast.com. That's OLDpodcast.com for a free gift as well as more actionable tips and resources to help you maximize your potential. Thanks for joining us, and remember, your optimal life awaits.